of rebel activities.
Bategeezezza tibeetegefu okukwatagana ne gavumenti okukomekkereza ebigenda maaso ko n'okuzza emirembe mu kitundu. Poliisi n'amagye bendowoozayo okuba nti buno buyeekera baagiwakanya dda, wabula bwe kiba nti ku njuyi zombi tekuyakkiriza nti ye mulumbaganyi. Poliisi n'amagye basigala bakyalina ebibuuzo bingi eby'okuddamu, naddala ani yalumbye, agenderera ki era akwatibwa ddi avunaanibwe. Solomon Kaweesa, NTV Akawungeezi.
Wa NTV Akawungeezi. Abakulu okuva mu disitulikiti y'e Bundibugyo balagidde abantu abasaba mu 5000 ababadde basengukidde mu nkambi okuddayo ewaabwe. Bano babadde badukidde mu Bukwanga Transit Center, ekifo ekyateekebwawo okuyamba abanoonya obubudamu. Naye ab'ebyokwerinda erudde bagamba nti embeera eriwo kati tetiisa nnyo nga bwe gwabadde.
Budde bwa kumakya era abamu ku bantu balabibwako nga bazingako ebintu byabwe muli emifaliso sako n'ebirala eby'okukozesa ewaka oluvannyuma lw'okwegeka oluba wano mu nkambi ya Bukwanga Transit Center eyateekerwawo abanoonyi b'obubudamu abakongo. Ekifo kino kyaggalwawo wiiki 2 emabega oluvannyuma lw'abakongo okuddayo ewaabwe era tewalakkirizibwa kubeerawo. Kyokka kino tekitangidde abamu ku babamba okuddukira wano olw'abazigu be bagamba nti batandise okubalumba mu nsozi gye babeera.
Bava ku lutalo lw'abano banafu abakonzo okutandika okuva eri mu myena nga bambadde irizi ne bakuta ebipanga ebijambiya nga bakuta amafumu n'obusaale nga balumba ffe ababwisi ne batanga okusalasala abantu kati ffe naffe kwe kudduka ne tujja wano mu kampo.
Bano beeraliikiridde okuddayo awaka yadde nga embeera y'eno nayo ebanyiga.
N'enjala magi tuwali tuli bubi twasuula wano nnaku 2 tuli bubi.
Abakazi baffe bazaala tebalina ddwaliro gye bazaalira, leba tiwali, buli kimu tiwali. Sawa zino omuntu bwakwatwa na gundi kolera ajja kufa bufi.
Abamu ku bano enjala erabika okuba ng'ebaluma wadde nga walala abazadde bagezaako okuyiyaako okulya. Bwaba ekitongole kya Red Cross abaliwo okuyamba abantu nga bano bategeezezza nga namba y'abantu mu nkambi eno bwebeewuunyisizza olw'obungi.
The number you find in the evening is quite different from the number you find in the morning or the afternoon. Therefore, the estimated number could be 4,000 to 6,000 people who are here in the camp.
Bano nabo batubuulidde nti embeera wano yeraliikiriza.
There is shortage of drugs in this camp. As you can see, the place is crowded and therefore people need support.
Abantu abasinga obungi wano be bakyala nga kw'otadde n'abaana abato. Wabula abakulira disitulikiti ya Bundibugyo bavuddeyo ne bategeeza nga bwe batagenda kukkiriza muntu yenna okubeera wano.
Tosobola kulekera omutemu gap awali enju awali emmere n'olowooza nti okoze kirungi baddeyo kubanga teri muntu yenna anabatemu gwe bakwatako.
Tugumye nnyo naye tujja kugenda mu kyalo ate twedifendinge ng'abantu.
Abantu abamu balabiddwako nga bakuttemu ebyabwe nga batandise n'okuva mu kifo kino yadde nga abamu bakyagaanye okukyamuka. Suhail Mugabi, NTV Bundibugyo.
Waliwo omuserikale wa UPDF atiddwa mu kiro ekikeesezza olwaleero mu disitulikiti y'e Kasese oluvannyuma lw'abantu abatannaba kutegeerekeka okumulumba ne bamufumitafumita ebiso. Private Vincent Kabandina ekimusiza tekinnaba kutegeerekeka. Waliwo ate ebyambalo eby'amagye n'amasasi poliisi byekukunudde okuva mu mayumba g'abatuuze abamwera mu Kasese. Katufune ebisingawo.
Omulambo gwa Kopolo Vincent Kabandina gulabiddwa abantu abadde batambula nga gugangalamye mu kitaba ky'omusaayi era nga guliko ekiwundu ku lubuto. Kawalina okuttibwa kigambibwa nti yabadde yakafuluma mu nnyumba yo ku ssaawa 6 ogw'ekiro ekikeesezza olwaleero era nga yattiddwa Kinyana Mpindi okuva ne waasula. Wabula tekimanyiddwa obanga abaamusse be baamusse mu nnyumba ye obanga yabadde afuluma kugenda makubo ge. Poliisi n'amagye nga bambalidde emigemera wala basazeeko ekifo Kawalina we yattiddwa mu kaweefube okuzuula entabwe kwe yavudde.
Unknown people murdered him, but we have dispatched there a team of detectives plus a canine unit to find out exactly what transpired and what could have been the motive of the murder.
Ekifo kino ekya Kikorongo kimanyiddwa okubaamu abantu abangi naddala mu biseera eby'okumakyako n'ebyakawungeezi. Wabula nga bw'olaba obuyumba buno bwonna obutera okubaamu abantu mu ssaawa za kakati bwonna bugaddwa bujjuddeko kufulu n'eri abantu gye batera okubeera okusinziira ku batuuze be twogeddeko nabo. Kino kiddiridde ebyabaddewo akawungeezi kajjo omusirikale wa UPDF we yafumitiddwa ekiso n'afa. Waliwo omuvubuka akwatiddwa ng'ateeberezebwa okuba nti alina ky'amanyi ku nsonga eno.
Given the situation and, of insecurity in the district, we cannot rule out that this could be part of the continuous challenges we are facing in the district.
Mukafuba okwongera okufeffetta abantu abali emabega w'obusambattuko buno, poliisi era eriko ebikwekweto byekoze mu kibuga Kasese era gye biggweredde ng'eriko ebintu eby'enjawulo byeyodde okuva mu maka g'abantu abatali bamu. Mu bizuuliddwa mulimu ebyambalo by'amagye ga UPDF, amagye g'omukago gwa Africa aga African Union ko ebintu ebirala bingi.
Even we recovered bullets and we have it in our custody with a number of suspects and we are going to charge them accordingly.
Poliisi era eyogeddeko abantu ku kyalo Bigando ng'eno abantu 11 gye battibwa ku lunaku lw'omukaaga lwa Ssabbiiti eyise n'ebagumyako okubasuubiza obukuumi. Bano nga kati babadde badduka mu maka gaabwe wakati w'okutya, poliisi bakubiriza okuddayo ewaabwe awatali kutyamu.
Tulina okuddayo waka era obukuumi bugenda okubeerawo okulaba nti tewali muntu mulala atayinza okubayingirira n'akola ebikolwa ebyo ebikoleddwa.
Abantu 13 be bakatibwa bukyansasagge eno ebalukawo e Kasese, kyokka abakulira ebyokwerinda bagamba nti bakukola kyonna ekisoboka okulaba nga abali emabega w'ebikolwa bino bavunaanibwa. Julius Senkandwa, NTV.
Waawo NTV akawungeezi eby'e Kasese bundi bujjo n'entolokongo obirese. Waliwo ebisawo bisatu ebibadde bikubyeko ebyambalo by'amagye ebiboyeddwa e Busia ku nsalo eya Uganda ne Kenya. Abasajja babiri bamaze okukwatibwa babulire poliisi ebisingawo ku byambalo bino. Poliisi e Kenya yegudde ku bitereke bino nga biteekeddwa mu baasi ebadde eva e Kampala okudda e Nairobi.
Obulumbaganyo obugenda bweyongera buli olukedde mu Kenya butanudde ab'ebyokwerinda okwongera okumyumyula ebyokwerinda naddala ku nsalo omuli ey'e Malaba ne Busia. Akawungeezi kajjo mukwaza bbaasi eyabadde eyingira mu Kenya ng'eyise Busia, abasirikale bagudde ku bisawo bino bisatu nga bikubyeko ebyambalo by'amagye. Nnyini bisawo bino tannamanyika. Omugoba wa bbaasi eno eya Spider Coaches yagombeddwamu Ddobwala wamu ne Turnboy we nga poliisi bwegenda mu maaso n'okunoonyereza.
And the bus has also been detained and we want the two to assist us with the investigations to be able to know where they got the uniform from, where they were taking them and for what reasons.
Busia ne Malaba bye bimu ku bifo ab'ebyokwerinda bye beekengera ennyo okuba nga bisobola okuyitamu abamenyi b'amateeka. Eno abasirikale b'amawanga gombi Uganda ne Kenya eriiso balikanudde era basiiba balawuna essaawa 24.
NTV akawungeezi eriemu n'eddakiika 15 tugenda okuwumulamu tukomewo n'ekitundu ekyokubiri naye kankubulire ebimu ku bye tulina mu kitundu ekyo. Amasanga n'enjaga bikwatiddwa ku kisaawe Entebbe, waliwo n'abakwatiddwa bagende bannyonnyole. Bye mukola mweswaza, omulangira Nakibinge akomye ku munyagwa ne Muzaata ababadde beesindikira emizinga gy'ebivumu.
Olugero lwa leero lukutuusibwako Movit All Day Confidence.
Ow'akagaali yafuuka enkima anti omulabakkirira
nti oli nkima ku ggaali yo. Olugero olwo lwava ku bantu abamu abalimu okutegeera amangu ebyogeddwa. Okukugamba nti oli nkima ku ggaali yo oba tofuuse nkima. Buli lw'oba totegedde oteekwa okubuuza.
Pride is your beautiful hair.
They're all winners. With Movit No Best, you can also be a winner.
Movit All Day Confidence.
Having broken the hunger story in Napak, we appeal to the general public to contribute towards the Feed Napak initiative. Kindly donate items like clothes, food, shoes and other items to support our vulnerable brothers and sisters in Napak district, Karamoja. Kindly bring your donated items to the Uganda National Theatre from the 2nd to 30th June 2014 or send your mobile money contribution to Winnie Banage on MTN 0772 121986. For more information, call Diana on 0791 162357. We can do great things with great love.
Kegende maaso NTV akawungezi. Poliisi ku kisaawe ky'ennyonyi y'Entebbe ekutte abasajja babiri bajibulira ebikwata ku masanga g'enjovu agasoba mu kilo 500 agabalirwamu obuwumbi bwa siringi bukumpi 3 agaboyeddwa. Poliisi era eriko ne kilo z'enjaga 36 zeekwatidde Entebbe awo. Kirowoozebwa nti enjaga eno ebadde etwalibwa mu ggwanga erya South Africa.
Enkyaleero poliisi y'oku kisaawe ky'ennyonyi Entebbe wamu n'ekitongole ki Uganda Wildlife Authority bategeezza nga baliko amasanga g'enjovu ge bakutte nga gateeberezebwa okuba gabadde gatwalibwa mu nsi ez'enjawulo. Kino kidiridde abasajja babiri poliisi beeganye okwatukiriza amannya okusangibwa n'amasanga gano ku lw'omukaga lwa Ssabbiiti ewedde ku kisaawe ky'ennyonyi Entebbe nga bakozesa olukujjukujju okugayisaawo.
We recovered these items, ivory, from within the terminal, from within the airport. They had already accessed, and they were kept in one of the rooms.
Poliisi egamba nti gano bagasabika mu ssanduuko ez'ekikanga kino era nga bw'otoba mwegendereza nnyo kizibu nnyo okutegeera nti batwala masanga.
The criminals were dealing with people that are sophisticated and they operate within this region. And we are now looking at the routes, that which routes are these people using? And why do they bring ivory all the way from Tanzania to Uganda, for example? What are the reasons for that?
Gano gazitowa kile zisuka 5 ngera zibalirwamu obumbi bwa Uganda 2 n'ekitundu.
What you see here weighs a total of 577 kilograms. And it is worth 1,154 United States dollars.
Kino kyongera okulaga nti eddembe ly'ebisolo mu nsi yonna likyatyoboolwa era ng'olwaleero amasanga agali mu kilo 5 gakwatiddwa era nga kiteeberezebwa nti enjovu eziri 5 zizaafiirwa obulamu bwazo. Okusinziira ku bakungu mu kitongole ky'ebisolo wamu ne poliisi, amasanga gano gava mu ggwanga lya Tanzania era guno omulundi gwa 3 nga gakwatibwa. Wabula kye beewuunya y'engeri abantu bano gye bayita ku bukuumi nga kiteeberezebwa nti bandiba nga bakolagana wamu n'abakuumi okuyisaawo ebintu nga bino.
We expect some connivance actually. Of course, this business here is worth a lot of money, as you've seen.
Si masanga gokka agakwatibwa wabula n'enjaga eweza kilo 36 ng'eno nayo ebadde kukusibwa.
The bag that contained the drugs arrived here. But there is nobody claiming the bag.
Kinajjukira nti bannayuganda 2 bakamala okuttibwa mu China so nga n'abalala bangi basulidde kuttibwa lwa kukusa njaga. Ivan Kimuli Kigozi,
NTV akawungezi.
Katikkiro Charles Peter Mayiga abuulidde bannabyabufuzi abamu okulekerawo okulowooza nti ebyobufuzi kuwuddisa abantu. Mayiga abaddeko ku kitebe ekya Forum for Democratic Change FDC ne Conservative Party CP Najjanankumbi. Alambudde amasinzizo n'amakolero mu ggombolola y'e Lubaga gy'akuŋŋaanyiza siringi ezisobye mu bukadde 9.
Kaweefube w'okuzza Buganda ku ntiko Katikkiro Mayiga gwaliko ategeezezza nti waakusembeza buli muntu singa abeera ng'akkiririza mu nsonga ezitwala Buganda mu maaso. Olwaleero Katikkiro asibye atalaga ggombolola ya Lubaga omubadde amakampuni ebitebe by'ebibiina by'obufuzi ssaako n'amasomero.
Kakati mmwe bannabyabufuzi mbasaba musse ekitiibwa mu nnono kubanga abantu abawagizi bammwe balina ennono gye bagoberera.
Mu kwogera kweri bannabyabufuzi Mayiga abategeezezza nti kyabulabe nnyo abakulembeze okulowooza nti ebyobufuzi kazannyako okuwuddiisa abantu kubanga bangi kibaviiriddeko okugwa mu katyabaga.
Ebyobufuzi tebisobola kubeera kazannyo nga bivaako abantu okufa. Bano ba General Mugisha muntu baalwana eruweero kubanga waliwo abantu abaali balowooza nti ebyobufuzi kazannyo.
Katikkiro era akuttidde bannabyabufuzi bano nti kino kye kiseera Uganda okutandika okuzannya ebyobufuzi eby'ekintu ekikulu nga batambulira ku musingi ogw'okunyweza eggwanga.
Mukikole nga munyweza okwegatta kw'abantu ba Uganda. Omuntu okubeera Omuganda tekimugaana kukolagana na mulamwo.
Ate bo bannabyabufuzi bamutegeezezza nti byakola biwa essuubi nti ebiseera bya Uganda ebijja bitangaavu.
We get a feeling that you are someone who is interested in building institutions, who's trying to build transparency in the manner in which things are done, and we are people who believe in institutions building. You are non-partisan as an institution, but we are a political party.
Oluvannyuma Katikkiro era atuseeko ku ssomero lya Badiventi erya Yanga Christian Najjanankumbi era na bano n'abatikkula ettoffaali lyabwe.
Kitaawe w'omwana yamulambika yakolerera ebiseera bye eby'omu maaso. Awo nno nze mulaba nga neetawula bwenti ndi ku mirimu gya kitaffe Ssaabasajja Kabaka.
Okulambula kwa Katikkiro kuno akumalire ku kitebe kya CP Najjanankumbi era nga we tuviiriddewo nga bakakuŋŋaanyayo obukadde bwa siringi 9 n'ebintu ebikalu bingi. Dini Lobo Wasava, NTV akawungezi.
Abo buyinza bagadde essomero lya Mary Zoga Kids Memorial Primary School Esseeta lwabutaba na bisaanyizo byalagirwa. Akulira poliisi Kasangati James Kawalya RDC Betty Magogo nga balina Joseph Semakulu w'ebyobulamu be balambudde essomero lino era ne basalawo bwe batyo.
Essomero lino lirina abaana 81 kyokka nga mulimu n'ab'emyaka 3 era nga basulayo. Kigambibwa essomero lino lyatandika n'ekigendererwa eky'okuyamba abaana bamulekwa.
Bano abaana tubayamba buyambi tetulina kisulo as do we have orphanage.
Abaana bano babajja mu bitundu by'e Wakiso, Kampala, Jinja ne Iganga. Wabula ekyewuunyisa nti abaana abawala n'abalenzi beeyambisa ebinaabiro bye bimu.
Sinsereke nga mukyo nyangu nnyo okuvamu obulwadde endwadde zijja okulwaza abaana. Tezaawu tewali kyawula toyileti y'abaana bawala n'abalenzi.
Essomero lino okutuuka okuggalwa kiddiridde abatuuze okwekubira omulanga eri poliisi ng'abaana bava mu ssomero lino bwe bababbako ebintu byabwe. Bano basangiddwa nga n'omutema mpola gubali bubi.
Basibanjala n'otuuka amazzi bagenda nga beeyigira ekyokulya mu kyalo.
Bwe bajja amazzi ge bakozesa bw'olaba otolema kwennyamira. Akulira essomero lino Paulus Kasule agambibwa nti yaweebwa layisinsi y'abaana abaddayo eka kyokka ye n'agattako n'ekisulo.
Kyongambe kize bulungi sibaddeewo mbalengeze kunoonya ssente z'abasomesa na ssente za mmere.
Okuddukanya essomero oteekwa okuba nga omanya amateeka gafuga essomero. Tokkirizibwa kuteekawo kisulo kyonna nga tegifunye permission.
Aweereddwa wiiki emu okukubira abalabirira abaana bano essimu bano n'abaana baabwe.
NTV akawungezi. Jjajja w'Obuyisiraamu mu Uganda Omulangira Kasim Nakibinge ayingidde mu kunenengana okuli wakati wa Sheikh Nuhu Muzata ne Meeyo w'e Kawempe Mubarak Munyagwa Mugati gwa Bata. Abaddu ba Katonda bano gye buvuddeko babadde beewereza ebivume ebigumu okukira ekkufulu ng'entabo eva ku Munyagwa kusoma dduwa mbwesuula gavumenti eriko mu Uganda.
Kulabula abantu mulekerawo okuzannyira ku Busiraamu. Ekivubuka kibeera Kawempe eri twakironda nga tukirondanga ekisajja ekintu kiramu tulaba byoza kiroza kivubuka Kisiraamu Mubaraka Munyagwa Sserunga Mugati gwa Bata
ne kitufeera ne tukiwa obululu bwaffe. Bwana Muzaata akalulu akoko kakubula onoonya akamunyagwa sebo obutiko tebukonanga no ate nogamuteekeko ebijanjaalo. Bwana Muzaata Muzaata.
Okuyombagana kw'abaana okuviiriddeko Omulangira Kassim Nakibinge okuyingira mu nsonga zaabwe abatabaganye. Kitegerekese nti ye Sheikh Muzaata yayitiddwa olunaku lw'eggulo nga n'olwaleero Munyagwa naye asisinkanye Omulangira maka g'Ekibuli.
Naye nga ekirwaki tuyingidde mu nsonga eno babadde batandise okwogera amafuukule buli omu eri munne. Ensonga eyo gye tusazeewo nti amafuukule ago galina okukoma bunnambiro.
Omulangira Nakibinge agamba nti teri alina lukusa kugira muntu mulala kusaala nga bw'aba yagadde.
Okusomeddwa oba okusaba Katonda nga bw'aba alabye tekirinaamu bukyamu okuba nga omuntu asomye edduwa. Ekyo tukirekera Katonda alabe amazima agali mu dduwa eyo asalewo ekisembayo.
Ye Munyagwa agamba nti agondera okusalawo kw'Omulangira.
Ffe entalo y'emmere gye tulya twabadde tutegese okulwanagana. Of course munabyafuzi omulumba mulwanagana naye nga bwe nabagambye nti Obusiraamu bulina commander in chief bagamba cease fire toddayo kusitula wadde omutwe.
Tukeera agamba nti Muzaata alina okwebaza ennyo Omulangira.
Neera Sheikh Nuhu Muzaata alina okwagala nnyo Omulangira Kassim Nakibinge. Baana gye tuba tulaga wabadde wazibu.
Okuyombagana kw'abano kwava ku dduwa ya Kamulali Munyagwa ne banne gye baasala nga baagala gavumenti eno eveeko. Muzaata gy'agamba nti kyali kinyoomola Obusiraamu.
Neera Omulangira ebintu by'eddiini abitegeerera ddala yali ku ntikko wano.
NTV akawungezi. Omubaka wa Parliament akiikira municipal y'e Masaka Mathias Mpuuga ayanjizza ensonga ezikwata ku State House okugaana NTV okubeera ku mikolo President kwali. Ono agamba nti abakulira State House balina okuvaayo babeeko bye bannyonnyola ku nsonga eno. NTV tefunanga kutegeezebwa mu butongole ku nsonga eno nga n'ejjebuli eno ekyalinda. Speaker Rebecca Kadaga asabye Minisita avunaanyizibwa ku nsonga z'obwa President aveeyo ayongere okunnyonnyola.
Ask the Minister for the President to come and explain whether it is true and what happened when the President came here.
Speaker alagidde Minisita wa President ajja annyonnyole Parliament obanga ddala ogaana NTV n'ebitongole ebirala by'amawulire omukavalinga kintu kitongole oba lugezigezi lw'abantu abetodde President. Bw'ofuuka President oba tokyali muntu wa bulijjo akola ebintu nga bw'oyagala mu nnimiro yo. Ebintu by'okola birina okulabibwa eggwanga kubanga eggwanga gw'oliyimirizaawo nga President. NTV kitongole kya bwannannyini kiwa omusolo kifaananyi kikyoweereza eggwanga ng'ogamba nti Uganda democracy ate bw'olemesa abantu okubuulira ebifa mu Uganda n'ebikolebwa abakulembeze tesobola kikkiriza nga Parliament.
Mathias Mpuuga omubaka wa municipal y'e Masaka. NTV akawungezi ekyagenda mu maaso katufuna akatale k'ensimbi.
Akatale k'ensimbi kakutuusibwako.
Invest, reap, grow. ICEA Asset Management. Profile of stability. Grow your wealth with ICEA Asset Management. Invest wisely with our unit trust fund that offers individual investors, companies, groups, and associations a chance to pool funds together for a minimum contribution of 100,000 shillings. ICEA Asset Management. Profile of stability.
Bwe tudda n'ebyemizannyo ogenda okuwulira bannayuganda abamu bye balowooza ku mupiira ogwa leero ogwa Germany ne Brazil. Mu byemizannyo olwaleero ttiimu okuva mu mawanga 7 zisuubirwa okwetaba mu mpaka z'omuzannyo gwa volleyball eza NSSF KAVC International ezitegekebwa buli mwaka wali e Lugogo mu Indoor Stadium. Empaka zino ze z'omulundi ogw'e18 era zatandikibwawo okujjukira abo abatandikawo ttiimu eno eya KAVC mu mwaka gwali gwa 1972.
Abategesi aba KAVC bakuyingira empaka z'omwaka guno nga baluubirira okuziwangula bongere ku bikopo 6 eby'abasajja n'8 eby'abakazi bye bazze bawangula bukya mpaka zino zitandikibwawo. Empaka zino ezigenda okuzanyibwa wakati w'ennaku z'omwezi 9 ne 10 omwezi ogujja zakwetabwamu ttiimu 24 okuva mu Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, DR Congo ne South Sudan. Abategesi bagamba nti empaka zino bazitegeka buli mwaka n'ekigendererwa ekyokuwa mukisa bannayuganda okuzannyako ne bannaabwe okuva mu mawanga amalala.
Tugitegeka okusobola okuwa ttiimu eza Uganda ezizannya omuzannyo gwa volleyball okusobola okubeera nga zizannyako ne ttiimu kafulu endala eziva mu nsi ez'ebweru kugeza nga Kenya, Rwanda, DRC Congo, Tanzania, Burundi.
Wadde nga bakyasinze okuwangula empaka zino, abategesi aba KAVC basemba okuwangula empaka zino mu 2011 mu basajja so nga ate abakazi basemba okuziwangula mu 2008. Ttiimu ya Inatek okuva e Rwanda be bawangula ekikopo ky'abasajja omwaka oguwedde ate Nkumba ne bawangula eky'abakazi. Sam Mpoza, NTV Akawungeezi.
NTV Akawungeezi. Mu byemizannyo ebirala mu World Cup olwaleero semi-final zitandikira German bugenda kubefuka ne Brazil abategesi. Brazil jjukira abazanyi baayo ab'amaanyi nga Neymar ne Thiago Silva tebalina. Guno gwe gugenda okuba omulundi ogusoose ttiimu zino okusenkana okuva mu mwaka gwali gwa 2022. Era ku mulundi ogwo Brazil ye yawangula. Abamu ku bannakampala bawadde endowooza zaabwe ku mupiira guno.
Omupiira ngeri gwezannyamu ajja guwangula. Era nsuubira omuzannyi agenda oguteeba okuwangula omupiira okuzannya omupiira obulungi agenda kuba Ozil wa Germany.
Anze omupiira ogw'olwaleero manyi Brazil ng'abategesi bakuguwangula Germany. Bwa ttiimu genda ye yakalubiza Brazil yali kiri. Bwa nze mbala Netherlands ne Brazil ku final.
Results zisubira ku Germany. Ensonga y'empala Germany results. Germany abazanyi ba Germany abasinga basamira mu Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich badde kola bulungi.
Brazil nga bwe bwe nga bwenjira banganze. Yo Brazil omupiira gwagwamu. Kitegera kusinzira ko okugondi ku match yasooka. Yo basooka naye bakuba aina badde muno kachi nabo ne bakuba. Kati ate yo Germany kyemmanyi nganze. Bora kuba nti njiwagira. Kitegera nansi kyemmanyi nti yo Germany egenda kuyitako.
Nze mu ndowooza yange oba mu ndaba eyange Neymar yakoseza nnyo Brazil. Era wembanga bettinga yadde si bettinga omupiira ngwa Germany.
Ebya Germany ne Brazil obiwulidde abali mu kusiba akapapula ndowooza musobola okufumiitiriza nomanya ttiimu ki gye muyinza okuteekako ssente. Mutukoze bulungi okuva gye twatandikidde eddakiika esigadde 21 okwera essaawa 2. Amawulire amalala gajja kuba gajja essaawa zijja kubeera 3 ne ku ssaawa eyo nga 5. Kaakati okujjako okubagaliza okusula obulungi tewali kirala kyakubagamba.
NTV, turning on your world.
Sometimes children have amazing ideas, but they can lead to tough stains. And for tough stains, there's new Omo Fast Action. Its super fast cleaning technology removes stains fast. New Omo, no one removes tough stains faster.
Program Guide is brought to you by
Jessa Smooth Yogurt.
Program Guide.
Jessa Smooth Yogurt comes in various flavors like vanilla, strawberry and banana. Jessa Farm Dairy. Always trusted, always delicious.
Today's highlight with
Nice and Lovely Body Lotion.
What the hell's going on? Please don't hurt me, Macario. I didn't do anything to Chopo, I swear.
Are you totally out of your mind or just deaf? What part of I'm not moving in with you don't you understand, Inez?
I know you too well, Ricardo. No matter what you say, you won't be able to live without me. Isn't that right, my darling?
Come on, Inez. Get out of my house and get out of my sight.
You bring out the best in me.
New and improved Nice and Lovely Body Lotion. The 24-hour skin moisturizer that's your skin's best friend.
The best in me.
And the change of government won't stop a thing. I've run out of fingers counting the number of multinationals setting up here. What about the 3 companies that announced their plans to launch last week? I say they're shortly. Me, I'd be looking to sell. At what price? More. Much, much more. I don't know who you are or how you know these things, but one thing I'm sure of, you're in the wrong job. Here, call me tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd like to hear more from you.
Are you ready for your big break? The East African, understanding the region.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. By the 7th goal, you could hear a pin drop in the whole universe. This morning, Morning at NTV commiserates with the families of all Brazilians who remember you. Let's get this show started with a very hard question of the day. I do not know how to tell you to head over to our Facebook page because you're probably still in bed. But I continue to say, a luta continua. And this show will make you get from the dust and the sadness that you have this morning. Make sure that at least you'll get a mark from Morning at NTV by answering that simple question. Twitter is also available at Morning at NTV. And of course, you can feel free to use the SMS platform 6565. Mabel Kebirunji, I know you are rooting heavily for Brazil. I am sure you're injured too, like most Brazilian fans. How did you expect this mauling of your team?
At some point, Bran, I was wondering, is this an African team or is this a South American team? Because you would only expect such a result from an African team, in my opinion. I'm not too sure about you, but anyway, it was unbelievable, totally unbelievable. I think the word is annihilation or something like that. And obviously, the Brazilian coach saying yesterday was the worst day of his life. But I'd like to say to you and to all the other Brazilian fans, it's just a game, the beautiful game of football, and today we will see another semi-final, probably not as interesting as the one we saw. But anyway, welcome to Morning at NTV this Wednesday morning, wherever you're watching online or on air. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Meboke Birungi, and these are some of the stories in our bulletin this morning. Parliament is reeling from the revelation that several officials working in State House are earning as high as 96 million shillings per month. This is contained in the ministerial statement for the presidency that MPs received yesterday evening. As Agnes Nandutu reports, the Presidential Affairs Committee that oversees the presidency is now planning to summon the Minister for the Presidency, Frank Tumwebaze, to explain.
You're watching Morning at NTV with Simon Kasiate, Mabel Kebirunji, and Brian Mulondo.
To Article 33 of our Constitution.
While raising issues on the meager salaries of teachers and police in Parliament today, the woman MP for Dokolo District, Cecilia Ogwal, unveiled the salaries earned by State House officials. The ministerial statement for the presidency showed how much civil servants working in State House are grossing.
You would think it is a printing mistake. You may think it is a printing mistake, but Anna Babinaga is earning 96 million. It's also 1.152 billion per year. And Rhoda Acheng is earning 87 million per month. And Najumba, this is in a print, right, Honorable Speaker.
This revelation shocked MPs. Among the high earners are Irene Watenga Karamaji and Anna Babinaga, who take home 96 million shillings. Annette Mukavera, Rhoda Acheng, Farida Najuma, Florence Hashaka Kabahweza, and Beatrice Nyakaisiki Biancha, who all lost parliamentary elections and 87.6 million shillings monthly. There are also those who work in the Department of Medicines and Health Services, like Dr. Diana Foibe Atwine, who takes home 78 million shillings. Others who earn 72 million shillings monthly are Sheba Chobutungi, Agnes Nanteza Biretega, Dr. Gloria Soriwaji Kimuli, Potiano Jumba Rwembao, Hope Fortnite Achiro, Charles Ayume, Francis Byamukama Byeshenga, and Thomas Awoli Bahije. Those who pocket 67 million shillings monthly are Joel Rugaya, Stephen Orionzi, Joseph Cheyune, and Joseph Mukasa. There are also those who earn between 6 to 27 million shillings monthly. To lawmakers, this is outrageous.
That raises the question of against what salary structures are those civil servants being paid? Are they super civil servants? On what appointment terms were they appointed? Were their appointments really within the legal framework of this country? So it actually puzzles everyone.
As civil servants, not necessarily a political appointment, and for them to be earning this obscene pay is unacceptable. So I think this particular report, the policy statement of the presidency offers a unique opportunity for us to further scrutinize.
These are political assistants and advisors of the president with rage, because how else can we explain this when teachers can't access their 300,000 shillings per month and others are earning 96 million shillings?
Do not want to hurt myself by believing this salary. Not even a member of parliament. You can't earn this. There is no minister who earns it. The president does not earn this money, I can tell you.
The House Committee on Presidential Affairs, chaired by Nyabusozi County MP Colonel Fred Mwesige, is now planning to summon the Minister for the Presidency, Frank Tumwebaze, to explain.
We are going to scrutinize them and give our views. But from this information we've just received, I believe it is a bit abnormal, and if it is true, it is outrageous.
MPs in the past complained about the frequent supplementary budgets requested by State House, which range between 70 to 100 billion shillings.
A supplementary would be something they didn't envisage or something they can't budget for. But they bring supplementaries over salaries, which is an obvious thing, which has the first call on the consolidated fund. And we think this is very unfortunate.
Agnes Nandutu, NTV, Parliament.
I wouldn't mind an extra zero on my salary too. Well, President Yoweri Museveni has issued a strongly worded statement over the weekend in southwestern Uganda and appears to be blaming some cultural leaders of the Rwenzururu Kingdom for fueling the clashes. The president also blames the failure of intelligence for the attacks in Bundibujo that left at least 65 people dead. In a statement dated 7th July, the president revealed that 8 members of the security forces were killed, as well as 51 attackers. He also said that countries should not get anxious about the scheme, as it was defeated right on the first day of its execution, even before the full potential of the UPDF. He vowed that those involved in the killings will not go unpunished.
As tension and fear continues to grip the Rwenzori sub-region, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, General Yoweri Museveni, has spoken out on the security situation in Bundibujo, Kasese, and in Toroko districts in western Uganda. In his 10-page statement, the president seems to be pointing an accusing finger to extremist supporters of the Rwenzururu Kingdom and the king, or the Omusinga Charles Wesley Mumbere. According to the president, the genesis of what is now known as ethnic killings is rooted in the Omusinga's demands to transform a political movement which fought for a breakaway from Toro Kingdom into a monarchy, a move he resisted for long but later gave in. President Museveni writes, and I quote, "His Mumbere group, however, kept on insisting on the issue of monarchy, although there was a big group in Kasese that opposed the idea. Eventually, in order to create harmony, we withdrew objections to Mr. Mumbere becoming Omusinga, especially after people like Defense Minister Dr. Crispus Chionga and a large group of people who were opposed to the idea of monarchy withdrew their objection." In his statement, the president adds that this did not go well with the Bamba leaders of Bundibujo. In order to appease the Bamba, President Yoweri Museveni says government struck a deal with Mumbere to have the Rwenzururu Kingdom operate only in Kasese. The president then writes thus, "Those from Bundibujo and other areas that were interested in the Obusinga could go to Kasese. Even within Kasese, there are other indigenous groups that do not support these ideas. These are the Basongora, the Bamba, the Banyabindi, and the Bagabo. They have different ideas about this issue and have in several meetings with me made this categorically clear. We encourage the Omusinga to have dialogue with these groups. I do not know how far the dialogue has gone." In an apparent outfall over these differences, there were clashes last year when the Omusinga Charles Mumbere sought to visit Bundibujo district. Government blocked the visit, saying that the Omusinga may stoke tension in an area where he's unpopular.
Bump action!
I know, but then for today, no.
Tell me the reason why you are here.
For today, no, My Highness.
You are here to fight for the Bagwisi Bamba.
That's not why I'm here. No, Your Highness.
Indeed, in his statement, President Museveni explains these differences further. "I have, however, been hearing of some chauvinistic positions from some of those who claim to be supporting the Obusinga. They seem to insist that the Omusinga, apart from the Omukam of Toro in his area, should be the only cultural leader in Rwenzori region. On account of these chauvinistic ideas being bandied around for so long, it seems some groups hatched this criminal scheme that has caused the death of so many people. It is clear, therefore, from the president's statement why he backed the recent coronation of the new king of the Bamba people of Bundibujo, retired Major Martin Kamya, to preside over the Obundigia Bwabamba.
Abantu bano omugenzi Kawamala, omugenzi Mukirane, omugenzi Hati Mupadi. Ekyabali ky'okulwana ekaba ly'ejogo. Atusobola kulwanisa ejogo kandi okajoga abantu. Jogo yona.
The president also lashed out at security agencies for laxity in intelligence that failed to nip the planned attacks in the bud.
I'm going to kill this person here. Wanaona mnagani RDC? Hawa wanapiga RDC kabisa na mnagani.
In the president's statement, he says 8 security agents have been killed, while 51 of the attackers were killed in the gunfires. He adds that 65 people have been arrested in connection with the attacks. The president assures the country that there is no reason for anxiety since the schemers were defeated on the first day, even before the full potential of the UPDF had been mobilized. Solomon Serwanja, NTV.
Now, some cultural leaders in the districts of Bundibujo and Kasese insist that the weekend clashes must have been the work of rebels and not due to tribal differences. On the other hand, police and the army have blamed the conflict in southwestern Uganda that has left over 70 people dead on tribal clashes. The cultural leaders blame government and security agencies for failing to detect what they suspect was a rebel attack. In a statement issued earlier in the day, President Yoweri Museveni put the death toll at 65, while police had earlier put it at 80.
The older districts of Kasese and Bundibujo, plus the New Toroko district, host a number of communities with varied cultural practices and different cultural institutions that have been in existence for centuries. From 1962 to the 1980s, these tribes had conflicts over land. Although such clashes have been minimal and muted in recent years, Saturday's attack could fall in well with the government position that these are tribal clashes. But cultural leaders in this area don't agree, saying that these are non-tribal clashes.
Which is quite surprising. The attacks happened on government institutions.
And if there's anybody who was involved in that act, whether a Shamangush of Singaurenzuluru, these are the youths of the Singaurenzuluru, or any other person connected with the kingdom, did it on his own, but was not the position of the kingdom.
They have condemned the arrest and detention of some cultural leaders.
The attackers are not known, and we don't know them as the kingdom, and I believe that Mutoro may not be knowing also the attackers.
The Rwenzururu Deputy Premier Jeremiah Mtoro and Minister for Veterans Misali Mukwenda were picked up yesterday. Government has also come under fire, with some accusing it of creating sections within the region and putting communities against each other.
The Mudinjo Wamba has been installed, and the people who are living in Bundibujo were not consulted.
Because that does not explain why the attacks have taken place at the same time, nearly the same hour, in 3 districts.
Unlike government, the leaders insist that the conflict has nothing to do with tribal differences.
So we suspect there are such dots of rebel activities.
They all agree that working for peace is the way forward, but the leaders are asking government to pursue those behind the attacks and bring them to book. Police and the army strongly deny any possibility of a resurgence of the Allied Democratic Forces rebels. If the cultural leaders don't agree with government that these are tribal clashes, the million-dollar question then remains: who attacked Kasese, Bundibujo and Toroko districts in such a coordinated manner? Solomon Kawesa, NTV.
You're watching Morning at NTV, and we do continue to find out what is making news in the press. We cross over to the Serena rooftop to Brian, Joel and Simon. Good morning, gentlemen. Hello, Simon. Do you think the Netherlands will do what Germany did yesterday as they meet Argentina?
Well, to the extent that I'm seeing a letter coming from President Museveni saying that Kasese Bundibujo attackers will be pursued and decisively dealt with, perhaps you would want to transplant that and say that the Netherlands will pursue and decisively deal with the team that they will be meeting tonight, which is Argentina, just like the Germans did do us proud. Those of us who support German efficiency pursued and decisively dealt with the Brazilian team. Good morning, and this is what we'll be dealing with for the most part in the press review this morning, looking at the attacks in Kasese, ranging in from the Daily Monitor, the Red Pepper, and the Tri-Weekly Observer. A very good morning once again. It's the 9th of July 2014, a kind of cold Wednesday morning. Many of you waking up from that side of your bed, if you are a Brazilian fan, of course, waking up from that side of the bed where you wished only the hand of time could be reversed. And for those of you who support Germany, now we're getting down to the real football, like I've always been talking about, where boys are certainly separated from the men.
Why do guys always tend to support teams after they win?
Yeah.
You see how smitten he looks.
I asked you on the first day of the World Cup, what team do you support?
And you said, wait,
no, listen. These things are on record. You asked me, I swung you my car keys, and that was my answer.
What was it? Kasiate, you're such a politician.
With my little German automobile, which your usual Twitter haters are now going to start when the man lacks modesty. Yes, I own it. Renzori, where were my spies? Museveni is asking. The internal security organization infrastructure goes down up to the Gomborora, where we have got GSOs, seem not have picked up any simmering form of tensions leading to what we are seeing playing out in the Renzori region. And President Museveni is asking where were his spies. Now, Mr. President, for the most part, now you are beginning to get ideas as to the proficiency of some of the people that you give these Herculean tasks. And of course, you know that what has been trending since yesterday of this list that leaked from State House employees, which the Minister for the Presidency has categorically
Somebody
stated.
should pay me 96 million shillings a month.
Again, before we can go off on a tangent to spew fallacies, let us first recognize that the Minister for the Presidency has categorically refuted those figures claiming that there was a typographical error and an addendum has been sent.
Error of, so what was it supposed to be? 196 million shillings as opposed to 96 million shillings?
Or 960
How does a typo go through this entire process all the way and it is not detected?
But that's precisely what I'm trying to draw to. President Museveni is asking, where were my spies? This is the man who's got spies right from internal security organizations here in Nakasero down
For all
to...
we know, you might be a spy.
Down to the parish.
Now, I think I will have to ignore this nuisance fact. I am talking about...
You could be. By the way, I mean, they don't have the writings on their faces that you are a spy, that kind of thing. You know, anyone can be a spy.
Joel, shall I request that you exercise some restraint with regard to the character assassination, especially of persons who have equal platform as yourself? You are not going to stand on national television and start making such allegations about people.
I didn't say you are a spy.
No,
I said
listen.
you could be a spy.
Joel.
Oh, come on. Don't dwell so much
No,
on
no,
it,
okay, fine.
The border guys all over.
Absolutely. Just like you could be gay, just like you could be gay, and it's never written on people's faces. Take that. President Museveni is saying,
I don't support them and you support them, so who is?
Well, I don't have a problem with someone being gay, and that's why I don't have a problem with you. That's why I sit down with you and we can associate.
Okay, now you are insinuating that he's gay.
Without a doubt, you can take it. He is gay. President Museveni is asking himself.
Yes.
We've got a structure of intelligence up to the grassroots.
Yes.
But we failed to tick the boxes of where there could be simmering tensions. And the same applies to the fact that you've got secretaries in almost every office. To the extent that a secretary is typing out a document to be presented to Parliament, and they can afford to put a typographical error that would significantly shift an amount of money from one bracket to another bracket. That is, that is telling of the level of incompetence in government structures.
Is it incompetence or the president is losing out on his loyal people?
Maybe the spies are also too many. This guy got very aggressive. I hope you're not guilty. But look, I think we we need to be very careful about this. These guys are very organized. We are talking about tribal clashes and that kind of thing. The way they are executing this scheme, investigations, of course, are still being done. But when you look at the way this whole thing has been done, very well calculated, you're thinking there's probably a lot more than meets the eye.
And you see, for me personally, I'm seeing a shift of loyalty to the president, from the president to, you know, to people realizing that actually, in case the president does not come back, where are we going to start from? So let us secure, let us secure what we can right now, and by 2016 or 2018 or 2020.
What I don't understand
we
is
have
how you are
away
employed.
from the president.
If you, for example, the ratings of this television station started to plummet, and you realize that perhaps this will not be the #1 television in the next 3 months, you who's charged with waking up every morning to review the press, you start absenting yourself without explanation. You start performing below par simply because you're trying to position yourself for the next. I mean, for me, that would speak to your incompetence.
Of
rather,
course.
you would act
I'd rather
so professionally,
yes.
do whatever it is. Either you resign completely or you act so professionally so that the other person who is claiming to be #1 can pick your talent and bring you on board.
It.
So clearly, me, I see that if you have a secretary who is able to make this kind of typographical errors, even if John Sebana Kizito or Brian Mulondo or Joe Resenyo became president, God forbid, clearly, that is not the kind of secretary.
No, why hasn't it been happening all this time? Why hasn't it been? There's a clear shift of loyalty, Simon, and we cannot deny it.
Maybe
and that's what the president.
But you see, look, and people need to be on the lookout. We need to be very careful. There's a lot of tension, and there's other regions which are beginning to realize, okay, this thing is doable, and police is beginning to look out for that. There is that. We need to be very careful. For those that pray a lot harder. Whatever it is that
it has nothing to do with incompetence, because that secretary has not been incompetent for the last 20 years.
So they know what they are doing.
So it is an intentional typo. It is an
intentional
that's
typo,
what
or it is the truth. It has now leaked and they're calling it a typo. Is that what you mean?
Of course.
What is
there's an intentional shift of loyalty. People are disgruntled, and the president must come to that place and say, okay, what can we do to bring back what we have lost?
Okay, so here, in other words, you are saying, and want to take your word, that what we have as a staff in government and what we have as ISO operatives and all that, they are the most competent people, only that this time around, they are thinking they have no reason to continue doing their job because the regime that they are serving is collapsing.
But what is the explanation? What explanation do you have if you are able to detect Al-Shabaab attacks and cannot detect a simple village rebellion? Why can't we do that? Whether it's tribal or not, people are intentionally refusing to do their job.
No,
and it has nothing to do with lack of competence.
I can tell you, when someone does not do their job, they are simply incompetent. Whether they are doing it intentionally or otherwise, it is a sign of incompetence. Incompetence does not mean that you are doing it unintentionally. No.
But you don't address incompetence.
But I think Brian's point, loyalty. These people could actually know exactly what they are doing. You know, there could be a lot of connivance with these happenings in Kasese. Just like you're talking about, this payroll that came out.
Yes.
For goodness sake, you're thinking incompetence. This is a typo. I don't know, but
there are people who stopped appearing on TV
unraveled.
years ago, and when you see the amount of money, maybe it's better being off screen.
Talking about a friend of ours.
Yes.
Okay. There you go. If you become a spy or whatever the case might be. Now, the Minister for the Presidency in Kampala tells us that he is going to transform Kampala. This is what he says, that to put Kampala at the same level, we'll need to do a couple of things. Of course, stepping on some toes, whatever the case might be. There are concerns that we are slowly but surely pushing away a certain category of people from Kampala, sidelining them, trying to build walled fences, making some places nicer for the few. But these guys that we are sidelining, they will come and clobber us in the middle of the night, they will rob us, break into our houses, and that kind of thing. And I think that goes to show for we need to stretch this and ensure that we slowly but surely move collectively.
This morning, I want to borrow Simon's statement. We need to break so many eggs to make the omelette, Joel. Whether or not those people will come back and clobber us, they need to be pushed. Other countries have done it. Sometimes this collective responsibility must be trashed to get development. That's why sometimes they say, if you need to destroy a wetland to build something, let's do it.
Yeah, and then all over the place there will be flooding. The Parliament yesterday was flooding, and you're thinking, Even the yoga's house. No, I get your point of yes, there's going to be some collateral damage.
I mean,
but we need to be very careful.
I mean, I've had the chance to visit countries. I did not, for the most part, see much of a wetland in Copenhagen. Neither have I seen one in Berlin. But neither did I see flooding, and I was there in rainy season. So it is not necessarily true that when the Chinawataka swamp, for example, is finished, then we should give reason as to why we should go littering and block the available drainage channels that lead to the Kivovo channel. So clearly, I think there must be a give and take. That development must go hand in hand with responsibility. But taking you back to the Kasese situation and the Rwenzori, the red paper this morning is screaming with a headline of General Tinyefuza spilling some secrets with regard to the war in Kasese, lending credence perhaps the fact that these may not be ordinary tribal clashes, but something simmering under the ground to the effect that this could be a civil war in our midst.
It's funny, last night while I was watching more stories about the Kasese thing, I thought to myself, this, if I were Tinyefuza, I would say something. And now the red pepper is on the front page of the red pepper and is saying something.
This is what he says, no, not Tinyefuza. This is a quote of the day by Kale Kaihura, IGP. He says, this is not a rebellion, as people are saying, but a massacre like the Interahamwe killing that happened in Rwanda.
Well, what do we have in the Observer this morning?
Well, in the Observer, of course, the tribal clashes in Bundubujo making the headlines, and a couple of questions. One, security is saying it won't rule out rebels. How tribal gangs took over Kasese, and what the president said yesterday in reaction to the attacks, but also a very important question, was our security asleep?
Well, is that a question? Maybe it was. If they were awake, they were not alert, or they were not up to the task, I don't know.
Members of Parliament are up in arms, especially with the appointment of a new board to head the National Petroleum Authority of Uganda and the National Oil Company. Their issue is that the entire board was devoid of someone from the Islamic faith, and indeed the Imam of Parliament, Honorable Sebagala, did raise this issue and said he was glad that members of the Appointments Committee also have realized that the Islamic faith holders are marginalized for juicy jobs in government. Whether or not you agree, it is here in the Daily Monitor.
That gentleman is really fighting for the plight of Muslims in almost every sphere of government.
The other day was complaining that there were not enough Muslim ministers in cabinet. And I don't know, it's a catch-22 and you need to be very careful here. But look, we want to make sure that Uganda is... because at the end of the day, if we have as many Muslims on board, does that ameliorate the rest of the Muslims? I don't know. It's just like if you have one district woman member of parliament, and they call it affirmative action for the women. Yeah. Are you changing the lives of the women in that district, or are you changing the life of one woman in that district? But that's it. We need to cut across, because it is not fair that there will be certain regions that seem to be up there and the others are not, etc., etc. But let's not lose the saltiness out of that particular story.
Well, the Inspector General of Government seems to have halted this 5 billion government pay to the Kampala Associated Advocates for what they call, colossal payments. And this is a case that played out, that's been playing out in the newspapers. Get to read and find out what it is that this law firm did do to the government of Uganda to earn themselves that fee note of 5 billion Ugandan shillings.
Somebody writes a letter and says, appoint veterans as deputy RDCs. Patronage has taken a notch higher in this country, and that is why when you look at that list of those aides and that kind of thing, we're talking about the competence question. You're thinking, were these appointed on based on competence, or is it people that either lost out in primaries or whatever kind of thing? Because at the end of the day, if I am paying taxes for a civil servant, it should be because this person is competent. They can deliver services, as opposed to want to bring them closer for whatever reason.
But I have a feeling that happens in most countries in the
does
entire
it justify
world, where
that we should do it?
The president calls on his friends and does
gives
something.
them government positions.
Of course, it comes down to competence, but that will happen even if you are president. You would call on some of your buddies and you tell them, hey, at least be presidential advisor on bananas.
And there you go. And many of these presidential advisors, you've had them complaining. They never meet the president at all, year in, year out. but they're on the payroll, they are earning pay. There's a lady who...
Well, if I'm being paid 96 million,
You
I
don't
don't
care
need to
whether you
pay,
meet the
I don't need
president,
to meet the president.
Well, we have the Bunyoro king saying that the oil industry is sidelining his people. I do not know whether this is possibly one of those things that the GSOs and DSOs in this area need to take very keen interest in, because when you have a king making this kind of sentiments of sidelining his people by an industry, then clearly you can be sure there must be something bubbling underneath that could erupt to the magnitude of what we are seeing playing out in the Rwenzori region.
Call me naive, but what are the odds that Bunyoro won't get anything from oil?
But look, at the end of the day, you know that's why this whole federal thing seems to be catching fire. People are beginning to realize, okay, you can actually benefit as a region, but look, at the end of the day, this oil belongs to Uganda. Yes, it is coming from Bunyoro, and maybe we should do one or two things there. I don't develop the place a little bit more and that kind of thing. But it is wrong for the Bunyoro to insinuate that they should be the capital beneficiaries of this. You know, the entire Uganda should be able to benefit. It is all Uganda's oil. What is wrong with the rest of everybody benefiting?
Simon, if you are president, how much of royalties would you pay to Bunyoro, for example?
Well, if I were president, I would never make personal unilateral decisions. That's why there's a system in place. And I can understand why you're asking me that question, because you've been used to presidents here who are a one-man show and do not respect institutions of government. But Parliament should be able to deliberate and come up with what is an agreeable, after consultation with the people involved, as an agreeable percentage for royalties. I know for a fact that there's an idea to give 7% of the proceeds accrued from the industry to the local communities there. I know that we in the electricity sector, for example, are paying about 1 or 2%, and that is statutory. So clearly it will have to be a statutory instrument that then would instruct the government's action. If I were president, I would follow systems through and through.
With electricity, do you pay people, for example, if you want to put up those huge electric poles and you want to evict me from my land, do you pay me?
There is compensation, and you must have seen a story recently playing out in the newspapers of Uganda Electricity Transmission Company Limited, which is putting up a huge high voltage power lines across the country, and wherever these lines are passing, there will be compensation for people. I mean, huge power lines are like a road. We do not cross roads without compensating people. Just likewise with electricity, poles never pass without. I want to talk about high voltage power lines. These other small poles here do not necessarily cause an eviction of some sort, because we are bringing electricity closer to you. However, we at the Generation, for example, we do pay royalties. I can tell you, just 2 weeks ago, I personally carried a check to Jinja and another one to Njeru.
So you used to move around with money in sacks?
No, a check.
Look at this guy. What's wrong with him? I have clearly said there is a check. I don't know what people smoke.
All right. So I did carry
a check of over, it was in excess of, both checks were in excess of 500 million shillings.
To Ginger.
And Njeru, respectively, as our royalties for the last 2 years, which is a percentage of what we make. I mean, there's a long calculation, and that is a discussion we can have another day. But that is to tell you that seriously well-meaning and socially responsible corporate companies like ESCOM will always honor
that's companies.
The ones we are about to throw out of Uganda.
That makes sense then, because
people are watching us from Jinja. The local government there is watching, and they know for sure that they receive this money thanks from ESCOM. Of course, we continue. There's always a clamor for more, because obviously we cannot remain an island of excellence in a sea of dissolution.
Because
but that's a discussion
I was in Kasese, and this, the Kasese local council is saying, we've not been paid anything from the copper guys. They are not remitting any royalties. They need to pay us 900 million shillings.
But you see, I think they should, because look at the effects. As these guys blast away these places, the communities there are affected. So
but they give them free power anyway.
Free power. Yeah,
no, I mean,
is that enough?
It is a case of what later you call corporate social responsibility. I mean, if you went to Hyundai, for example, the place where Hyundai as a factory is found, if you went to the Mercedes-Benz factory in Stuttgart, I mean, those areas are developed simply because of the money generated by the local industry there. But, well, before you can sit and fold your arms and wait for freebies coming in from socially responsible companies, you may need to get yourself a copy of the Daily Monitor and read Seeds of Gold on how you can harness the soil on which you stand and the ground on which you lay. Here we see a guy who's harnessing huge sums of money from the growth of purples.
It's amazing what people Because every time I read this thing, I'm like, will I become a farmer?
Yeah, you'll
People
stop
are
having to grapple with the morning show. There's a special report here that asks, well, it seems to answer the question of why many women are at a higher risk of contracting HIV. But here on the right, I see when being married means more trouble. The rates seem to be higher among married people, whether or not you believe it. That's not to say you should not get married. You should...
There's still hope for you.
There's still what?
You may also need to
Who
add
says
that you can
there
get
was
married and you don't really have to
despondence?
go out for the opposite sex.
You don't have... By the way, seriously, somebody that day was asking me whether Kasiate is gay. You know, previously he's been supporting
Why?
these
The
guys.
man
And,
is
you know,
married.
I said, well, some actually both. You know, I said, I don't know. Send him a tweet, ask him yourself, and I should be able to answer.
You see, when I tell you that there's a time when people become total nuisances, and
Yeah, and don't become a nuisance
and
this
when,
morning.
and when you fall short of telling your colleague that you are becoming an idiot,
I
on
won't
national
tell
TV,
you, I promise,
and,
I'll
it
tell you
becomes
off
another
the
thing.
show.
But maybe we may need to save you from idiocy by telling us exactly what it is that's happening on the international scene.
Very much, Simon. Most of the news, believe it or not, is about Brazil. And I don't know why I'm smiling, you know, as they say, you mourn with those who mourn. And I probably shouldn't be as happy as I feel myself. But there were tears, and obviously there was joy. Depends on which side you were supporting. Here are the Germans, very, very happy. And here are the Brazilians, who were really, you know, beaten, battered, and bruised. Just the pictures show, I do not know, really gloom, so much gloom. And yeah, that's a big story on most of the web news pages today. On CNN, here still, Brazil dreams destroyed by ruthless Germany. On to BBC, the Ebola outbreak. Now, 25 more cases have been confirmed in the West African countries of Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea. Yesterday, we did talk of a Ghanaian who was suspected to have the disease. The results are out, and he is negative. So far, no Ebola in Ghana. But they feel here, according to a WHO spokesperson, they feel that the outbreak in West Africa they are struggling to contain it. We do hope it can be contained. Somali President's palace under attack from Al-Shabaab. Militants entered the heavily fortified compound, and fighting apparently is still ongoing, according to a government official who spoke to the BBC. This is on the BBC webpage. Now, the third largest democracy in the world is up in a tight presidential race, and that is Indonesia. We have the two candidates here, Subianto and Widodo, and this race is seen as too close to call. Now, North Korea yesterday fired some missiles into the sea. Why were they doing it? Was it just a practice? Was it just a test? It is scaring the South Koreans, and the Japanese Prime Minister has actually asked his cabinet to look into the matter. What were the North Koreans doing, fighting, firing those missiles into the sea? Militants storm an Israeli beach. Again, Israel intercepted a rocket fired at Tel Aviv and killed militants, the military said, as people on both sides live under a barrage of full air attacks. And this is obviously because of the teenagers who have been killed on both sides of the West Bank. Now, again, Brazil coach here, Scolari, saying it's the worst day of my life. And he thinks he's going to probably be remembered after all his years in football. This is how people are going to remember him, losing 7-1 in one of the world's biggest games. Again here, Brazil suffering a humiliating exit. On the Sky News page, there is a finger reader that is giving hope to visually impaired people. Now, unlike Braille, this one actually converts text into sound, so you can actually hear instead of feeling the letters. You will actually hear it. Very interesting finger device. And a Syria fighter here, still on the Sky News page, saying he has trained Brits. He has trained some Britons as young as 16 years old. He says it's quite easy, and it's a bit scary if you read about this. And there's also another interesting picture of a woman who hid cash in her underwear for jihadists, and all this still happening in Britain. We shall be taking a short break. Morning at NTV continues.
You're watching Morning at NTV with Simon Kasiate, Mabel Kebirunji, and Brian Mulondo.
You can bring everybody in parliament as long as they can wake up and vote for the NRM.
As long as the voters exercise their rights to elect their leaders, there was no need for term limits in Uganda.
I know him. I know how he operates. I know how he thinks.
There are ways you can go around these obstacles.
Why should I conduct myself as if I am Muyai?
It's absolutely true. I admired President Museveni.
Is the ICC a fiscal code targeting African leaders?
You cannot tell me that the whole trouble Kenya had revolved about only 2 individuals.
The money is not in the budget of this financial year.
You can't beat God. You see, God is polygamous also. Look at Jeremiah chapter 31.
The security of this country will largely depend on the contribution that the people make.
They've had their struggle, but that's about to change. They're 15 individuals with different backgrounds and one goal. They'll be tested to the bone with 3 professional trainers and supervised by a reputable medical team. Weighed every week where one has to be eliminated. If you want to be inspired, have a healthy body, and gain confidence, this is your show. Follow these individuals on their amazing journey because cameras don't lie. Burn it up, transforming lives as we create a healthier Uganda.
You're watching Morning at NTV with Simon Kasiate, Mabel Kebirunji, and Brian Mulondo.
Thank you for joining us today. Morning at NTV continues with the big story. Good morning, Simon. Whom do you have today and whom are you talking? What are you talking about?
Thank you very much, Mabel. Very good morning once again. And indeed, this morning we are trying to put some pieces together in this puzzle that's playing out in the Rwenzori region, trying to analyze what could certainly have fomented these clashes to the Herculean levels at which we are seeing them today. We're also going to be looking at what it is that government could have done to avert them. Of course, lending credits to what the president said, there was an absence of serious intelligence on the ground. And of course, to discuss this and more, we have got a political history done from Makerere University, Mr. Mwambutsi and Ndebesa, who will be trying to, give us, from an academic point of view, what it is that could have led to all these playings out. So this is something you ought not to miss. We are looking at over 60 people reportedly killed in just over a week in ongoing clashes in the Rwenzori region. The government has come to reassure Ugandans that this is not something we should so much worry about. It is just an issue of tribal clashes. But of course, there are people who are pondering the fact that how would tribal clashes play out in the form of armed people carrying machetes and other rudimentary equipment attacking government installations like police posts and army detachers to get guns and firing at their targets with guns and ammunition. Is this a tribal war? That question has not fully been answered. We can only pontificate and, of course, speculate. This morning, to analyze the goings-on in the Rwenzori region, I'm privileged to have Mwambutsi and Ndebesa, the university done from Makerere University, who is going to help us try to put these things into some bit of perspective. Let me start with this maybe obvious question to you, Mr. Mwambutsi. How could these people, rudimentary and rural as we know them, I mean, they are not even an urban folk that live in a town. They are up, hidden away in mountain ranges and in thick forests, organize themselves to the extent of arming themselves, to the extent of moving in those huge numbers and attacking government installations without detection. And even if they were not detected, that government installations there were unable to repulse them and contain them.
Thank you. I'm even surprised that they were not more organized than they look like. Because the Rwenzori movement is not a new movement. Such attacks in that region are not new. In fact, far from popular conception that the first state of emergency in Uganda was declared over Uganda by Obote in 1966-67. The first state of emergency was in independence Uganda was declared in Bunyangabo County in 1963. Wow. When the Bamba, Bakonjo on one hand and the Batoro were fighting, the government helicopters had to go there and houses were burnt down. So from that time, the people in Kasese or Rwenzori region have been at war in one way or the other. There is the Naru, which was also an organized armed group there. The Rwenzori movement was an organized group there. There is now ADF, and there is organizational infrastructure in the region. I want to believe that there is also an ideological mobilization infrastructure in the region. I think that's why people had those charms on them. So, and there must be a lot of gun running in the region for quite a long time. Actually, even during the colonial period, when the soldiers who were left behind by the governor of Equatorial Africa left the soldiers, these Nubians and other groups there. So that region has got a history of gun running and wars. But we shouldn't also forget that Kasese region or Rwenzori region borders Congo. You have the Mai Mai group and other fighting groups in the Congo. Even M23, although they are somehow down, I think they could have some connections there. Absolutely. And very many groups there. So I am surprised that they were not even more organized than they were.
Well, that's an interesting historic perspective that you bring on the table, something that maybe had eluded many an eye in the analysis of this situation, that this is a place that has, for the most part, been at the center of clandestine rebellion and the like. But now coming down to this day and age where President Museveni's reign has proliferated and demystified the use of the gun, but also has proliferated every little nook and corner of society with intelligence services. How were the ISO operatives going down to the Gombora level of GISO and able to detect these simmering tensions?
I'm told there is now even Muruka ISO, parish ISO called PISO. And of course other state operatives.
Soon we'll have VISO, which is a village.
State operatives. I do not know much about their competence or incompetence, but we could also theorize that part of those PISO and ISOs are also part of that community. So one could also say that they were part of that one. Why would they betray one of their kind? You may not tell. So it could also be that angle that precipitated that. But also, as I told you earlier on, these people have been fighting for a long time, more than 50 years.
There's been gun running in Karamoja, for example, and these guns were used openly and brazenly by wrestlers to do and commit all the heinous crimes, even across the border. We've seen the government moving very swiftly through a disarmament program that took over years, and we can now comfortably say there is few guns in Karamoja, if at all. Why wouldn't the government have done the same in the Rwenzori region? They did not expect that these guns are somewhere up in the mountains hidden?
But it could also be the organization of the attackers. The question of gun running and fighting in Karamoja is criminal violence. But the one of Rwenzori is not criminal violence. It is political violence. It is, if you want, it is cultural politics, and it is not violence just for criminals' sake. It has a purpose, which we don't know. It has an ideology.
A unifying state.
Yes. But so, therefore, it could be that actually the attackers were more organized than they could camouflage.
But maybe help put this into perspective for our viewers who may not properly understand. Who is attacking who?
Oh, now...
At least we know that part of the attacked are soldiers and police officers. But who is attacking them? Is it a tribe? Is it an amalgam of tribes? Who is attacking who?
Let's actually put it in a wider perspective. First of all, I want to mention to you and the viewers out there that the whole question of monarchizing Uganda that started in 1993 is a project that has gone wrong.
Is it monarchizing Uganda or recognizing the already established monarchies?
Well, which monarchy was in Bundubujo or Kasese or Tororo or Teso? They were not there before. This is a growing industry. Actually, one of the fastest growing industries is the monarchization of the
So
society.
you, Mwambusi, are intending to go down to some new virgin place like Munyabutumbi and put up some kind of organizational structure and get yourself recognized?
From Mpororo, former Mpororo Kingdom. I could one of these days go to President Museveni to ask him to recognize me as his king, because
he also hails from there.
He's a fellow Mpororo, and I could, but that's a different matter. So, and since the monarchization drive in 1993, we have seen some level of violence of different forms.
Of course, we saw that playing out in the other September here in this central region.
No, before the September issue of central region or Kampala, before that, we know that unfortunately, the former Prime Minister Muhikirwa of Toro is facing death, is on death row for having killed a prince or he got involved in that. That was violence. You have seen in the media bloodshed in Busoga region. You saw the September one here in Kampala. Now you can see the one of Rwenzori. I think the Ugandans are trying to redefine themselves in this monarchization drive, but we are not very sure who is who. And then government comes in to recognize these. You see the president putting on robes during those ceremonies, performing certain rituals,
sipping of calabashes.
The last time I checked, he was the regent of Toro, and now it has become very complicated.
Yes.
And this monarchization drive needs to be handled very carefully, or else it will be an irony that these traditional institutions, which purportedly are supposed to bring unity, they are bringing disharmony and causing mayhem.
They are separating where they should be gathering.
That is true. But one of the reasons is that these tribal institutions have not been well handled. There has been a lot of political manipulation and patronage.
You know, we are speaking in broader terms, Professor, but let's get down to the real, let's domesticate this discussion.
I was coming to that. Maybe let me go to it. There have been also questions that you haven't maybe asked, which I have had people asking. They are saying, if it is a tribal clash, how come that the attackers the attackers allegedly to be Bakonzo did not actually attack Bamba? They attacked installations.
Yes, they did not attack
Babwisi. They did not attack Babwisi or Banyabindi. They attacked government installations.
Beautiful.
Except in Kasese, where they attacked the Basongora. So that is a question that people are raising, and maybe that they're saying these are not tribal clashes. Maybe, maybe not, but they could be tribal clashes, or they could be actually motivated to attack government installations precisely because they feel, that is the attack as if they are really the Bakonzo, they feel that government, central government, was responsible for encouraging the formation and recognition of the kingdom of Bundubujo called the Obudingia or something like that. But then when it comes to attacking the Basongora,
that is where I wanted to put my question.
Yes, that question I can hazard an answer to this, that the Basongora are pastoralists. And they are
nomadic at that.
They are nomadic. They are perceived by the Bakonzo to be related to the current government because Museveni is a pastoralist. And I think they have seen that situation where the Basongora are more linked to the government. Maybe they are more supporters of the government more than the Bakonzo. And therefore, the whole question of frustrated Bakonzo, they may think that actually
to anything related to the government.
They may even think that the Basongora are spying for the government, and that is why they are targeting them. In my understanding, actually the attackers were not targeting Bamba as a community. They were frustrated by the government in creating or recognizing the kingdom of Bamba. That is the question.
Having given us that wonderful analysis from a historic perspective to an understanding of what the situation is at the moment, and of course hazarding, some kind of responses to make us understand, roughly what this is all playing out to look like, I would want to throw it to you. What do you think the solution could be?
Oh, the solution. Yes, as a person, actually, I would do immediately, if I was government, rather than using basically the military solution, I would go and encourage the communities in the Rwenzori region or former Toro Kingdom. Actually, there are about 7 tribes recognized in the constitution. Batoro, Bamba, Bakonzo, Banyabwisi, Basongora, Batuku, all those.
All these babas.
What should happen is that they should be encouraged to form inter-community councils for dialogue. Inter-community dialogue councils. And they come together and dialogue over how they can stay together in that region.
But
because otherwise it is explosive.
We've seen a place like Busoga, which has about, 15 chiefdoms and 11 proper chiefdoms that can produce a king, failing to put together their minds and negotiations to get a unifying king figure. How is it, and this is just one tribe, how is it possible that then we can have discussion across the tribal lines? Some of them even have distinctively different languages. To have a discussion and dialogue, how can this be encouraged? How can it be feasible?
I don't remember anywhere that in Busoga territory they have consciously and deliberately created a dialogue council to address those issues. They are using the traditional councils, which are already partisan and they are associated with other groups. Secondly, I would also advise that the people in the Rwenzori region use the monarchical model of, let's say, the Japadora. You see, in the Japadora region, their king, or whatever name he carries, is that he's elective or he's appointive, but he's not hereditary. And so those people should have non-hereditary chiefdoms, such that if, for example, there are Bakonzo within Bundubujo region who feel alienated when it comes to the Obudingia, and because they feel that they can never have power, the cultural power that is, in the Obusinga, they would feel that they would have an opportunity if, for example, in one term of office, you'd have a Musinga who is a Mukonzo, another term of office, you'd have a Musinga who is a Mwamba. That would have been the solution, because after all, these are Republican organizations, really.
But doesn't that
as kingdoms.
But doesn't that defeat the whole essence of kingdoms and monarchism, so to speak? That monarchism is, by in its inherent nature, a hereditary process. That one is born with a silver spoon in their mouth, simple and clear. So what you're trying to put in place is a quasi-democratic Republican kind of setting, and we cannot have mini-governments within a grand government. With this decentralization and fragmentation of power, isn't it counterproductive for the unity of Ugandans?
Sure. The last time I checked at independence, there were only 4 kingdoms in Uganda. Actually, Busoga was not a kingdom, and it's not a kingdom, it is just a territory. And now we are having more than 10, and the Minister of Culture was saying there were 8 on the line who are
they actually recognize 10 or 11.
Kasiate might be asking for the kingdom of the Banyabutumbi. Now the question is, all these new structures being created are actually structures of tribal identification. There is an identity crisis in Uganda. Each group wants to come up and identify itself and redefine itself so that they can also have a share on the national cake. More particularly in that Arbatine region where we have discovered strategic minerals. And everybody wants to have an equal share or a fair share on these minerals.
We see in the morning, this morning,
Don't be surprised, by the way.
The Banyoro saying they feel marginalized, and that's their king saying that the oil industry seems to be marginalizing his subjects.
But the Banyoro people of Hoima might be surprised very soon when there might also be a new kingdom of the Bagungu in some other place like Blisa, because they are also gearing to create their own identity so that they can have a fair share on the national on the oil wealth.
This is getting out of hand.
And the government might recognize them, particularly so if, for example, the Banyoro prove stubborn in politically, then the government could recognize the Bagungu so that you weaken these Banyoro. These are cultural politics in the face of new discoveries of oil, and we are yet to see more of these if we are not careful. So the communities in that region should recognize that they are Ugandans and should live together form dialogue committees, inter-community dialogue committees, to resolve some of these conflicts, because conflicts are part and parcel of life. The problem is when they translate into violence. So otherwise, in Uganda and in other places, there are still latent issues over these monarchization drives that are likely to divide the country along ethnic lines.
Professor, of course, being a history don here, one would want to find out whether indeed you are keeping a very keen eye on these developments and documenting them for an academic thesis or an academic explanation in the years to come. Is that something you as a history department of Makerere University are looking at very closely and following and documenting?
In fact, that you have mentioned this one, this is a very big challenge, the academics, not only in Makerere. Now we have many universities and research institutions. I think there should be a program which, if I would hazard a name, I would call contested histories. Let's have contested histories program in Uganda, in any one of the departments or research institutions, to look at these contested histories and see how to channel them positively so that we do not have wars and the destruction of property and human lives just over contested histories, when we should be building communities and we should be building a nation and East African community, but we are retreating back into our pre-colonial tribal settings at this juncture. And the government out there, I would like to actually advise the government that when mediating these conflicts, which is the role of the state, they should not take sides, because hitherto there is an element of government taking sides and using these monarchical groups as patronage centers, as patronage networks for political support. And once you use that one, definitely you are bound to have problems within these communities, precisely because there are no clear defined boundaries of these communities, and they are very emotive. You can imagine people attacking a military installation using pangas. That is being emotional, and it is kind of another form of fundamentalism and
pressing
suicide.
the suicide button indeed.
This is another suicide, you can see. But people don't commit suicide because they like it as such, but because they are motivated by a certain value. President Museveni, in his missive, which I saw in the papers today, he calls them interests. But I want to call them values. There is a difference between interests and values. And I think the people in the region are pursuing values, but tied up with interests as subordinate.
Professor Mwambusi Ndebesa, wonderful advice to government. The challenge is, are they listening? And even if they are listening, will they take your advice appropriately? And that is the challenge we continue to grapple with. But as we conclude this, going forward, you've got Charles Wesley Mumbere, now a serious prime suspect in all this going on. You've got this new crowned Mwamba guy, the soldier. Then you've got King Oyo also raising issues of they're fragmenting my kingdom left, right, and center.
The Basongora want their kingdom.
The Basongora also want their kingdom. And all this, and we're looking at 2 years ahead of the next election. In your view, beyond the advice you've given to government, but let's also now try to hazard a reaction by government. What do you think government is going to do going forward? In the wake of this kind of instability, does it play very well in President Museveni's grand scheme of things of, it's easier to manage and win from a divided community as opposed to one that is unified and has got certain values that may not be in tandem with your whims and fancies?
It's very good that you have asked the political angle and the electoral angle to this whole question of contested history and monarchization. You remember that in 2006, the only region in Western Uganda that returned FDC MPs to parliament was Kasese. That was over the Obusinga recognition, because the government had reluctantly refused to recognize the Obusinga. And in reaction, government or President Museveni recognized the Obusinga of Rwenzururu. But thereafter, especially in the 2011 elections, a certain Honorable Kiza, the lady, the MP for the area, happened to be FDC. And her constituency winning was contested, so she went back in the re-election,
and
which was highly contested where all guns went there, Museveni went there, Besigye was there, and she won. And he wants to imagine that President Museveni and NRM were not amused and they were annoyed. And that is, in my estimation, which may be wrong, that they hurriedly recognized the Obudingia of Bundubujo in order to politically punish Kasese region for having returned Madam Chiza. And you can see how complicated the issue can be. It is tied up with cultural sentiments, traditional sentiments, the historical resistance movement of the Rwenzururu, together with electoral politics in Uganda. Now the last thing is about the oil question and the oil politics and cultural politics, all mixing up, considering that the region also borders Congo, which is volatile.
Volatile through
it is also not far from Southern Sudan.
Exactly, and Central African Republic.
It is not far from Central African Republic, neither is it far from some forms of Islamic fundamentalism hiding in the Congo.
Yes,
so the question of the Rwenzururu area should be handled carefully, because it might even go beyond Uganda and become regional and even become global, and it becomes unmanageable, like we have this situation in Somalia.
Someone will say that professors are always worth the name on, they're always worth the paper on which their names are written on, and I can comfortably say this perspective that you bring to this discussion in the last 20 minutes, I would never have had a more insightful discussion with anybody than yourself, and I really want to thank you for that insightful. Let's take a short break. When we return, as Simon says. Well, at the risk of adulterating the very highly informed postulations and, of course, analysis of the good Professor Mwambusi and Ndebesa, I will really restrain my, Simon says this morning, to calling upon the warring factions to recognize the fact that a peaceful settlement is the only way that can only lead us to a peaceful coexistence. I know there are grievances. Some of them act very firmly in your values, in the things that you consider very dear to yourselves. But, you know, resorting to violence should always and should not always be considered as an option. Perhaps now that you have tested the spoils of violence and there's a government in place that is perhaps in one or another trying to bring you to a negotiating table, a negotiated settlement, a peaceful settlement should be something that you should be putting high on your agenda, as opposed to fomenting volatility in the region that may lead to many years of destruction and, of course, equally more years of rebuilding and putting you back to where you started. We don't have a lifetime to waste. We always have a lifetime to live comfortably and profitably. The people in Kasese region, I think that's a message that we should be carrying with us, one of pacification and one of tranquility and living in total harmony. But of course, that's not to say that the powers that be need to negate their responsibilities. They need to go down there and try to find a lasting solution to this debacle without the use of force of arms, which many times alienate people from giving you the trust that you should always deserve. Have a good morning and keep it a productive day and keep it a productive month. And we can only wish you the very best of tidings. Till we meet again tomorrow, same time, same place, with yet more insight and analysis on the big issue that will be playing out at that moment.
You're watching Morning at NTV with Simon Kassiate, Mabel Kebirunji, and Brian Mulondo.
We've had so many stories about albinos being hunted for their hair, for their saliva, for their nails.
Unraveling the myths and misconceptions of albinism in Uganda.
It is a genetic condition. It is caused by the lack of one enzyme, tyrosinase.
Our members have died of skin cancer, and many people want to just attend that burial ceremony just to witness.
NTV gets to grips with the reasons why albinos are being hounded out in rural parts of the country.
Mikwano gyaffe bana NTV ate naddala mu bannaamu muli gw'emizannyo muli gw'ebyemizannyo gukomyewo 2014 ate mutya kati ate gukyusiza n'obudde kati gwa 7 kitundu wali gwa 9 ne gugoberera ntusanyuka kati gubongereddeko wano malya g'ebyemisana awo busooke gubatayize gubaletire kintu kyonna kalonda n'ebyemizannyo obwemuli gw'ebyemizannyo mupya 2014 Isima wali alagira Argentina yenjo mukubira eddiba lye omukwano gujja kukomawo ku muli gw'emizannyo naye kasita kinatuuka eri bano ba Messi okulumba abalenzi baffe ba Thiago Silva awo tewali mukwano omuli gw'emizannyo 2014 President.
Kampala has been voted in the past as one of the favorite cities for tourists, one of the most peaceful cities. That is something that is changing.
Kale Kaihura, the Inspector General of Police, and President Yoweri Museveni, their alliance, they can only crack down or stop individual strikes and individual demonstrations. But I don't think they can stop the growth of militancy.
No holds barred.
Besigye and Lukwago have particular grievances against the government, some legitimate, some misguided. What should the police do? Of course, the police has to intervene, A, to protect the power of President Yoweri Museveni and the NRM from disruption by Besigye and Lukwago, but B, also, never forget this, to protect those ordinary people whose property gets destroyed.
I want to ask that many think that they've actually been frustrated.
Opposition parties in Africa do not tend to be constructed around policy differences. FDC lacks a glue to hold its coalition of different power-hungry individuals together.
Incisive.
You see, the NRM is more divided internally than the FDC. The advantage with the NRM is it has political power.
Analytical.
I think that one of the best organized political parties in Uganda is the PPP, the People's Progressive Party with Dan Sali. This idea that everybody is telling around the world that Africans are poor and they cannot contribute to their own political and social emancipation is crap. In fact, I think that the opposition parties in Uganda have to win an election in an unfair and unleveled ground.
Newsnight with Andrew Mwenda.
Hey there, Mr. Krabs! Are you ready to party?
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it, move it.
Wow! Hello, fellow motor enthusiasts.
Oh, Mr. Krabs!
Isn't there any way for us to return all of them back to normal?
Hey! How did he do that?
The Red Ranger's a bigger problem than I thought.
It's time to finish this thing up!
What can I do to make them love me again?
What are you drawing, Kitty?
Mega Rangers? That's a mega win!
Hello?
King Julian, you are truly inspiring.
Ow! SpongeBob!
Fantastic!
Ekifo ekimu kissa wamusu n'ekyalo ekiweddeko abamanye bakiraza mumwa. Tugenda kutuuka gy'oli oyogere naffe ebikwata ku kyalo kyo, embeera mw'okolera, ebyobufuzi, ebyobulamu n'ensonga endala nnyingi. Ebyogerwa tebiyita. Tuusa eddoboozi lyo, yogera naffe buli lwakuna otereevu ku NTV Akawungeezi.
On the next episode, brought to you by...
At Orange, we know you want to do more on the internet. That's why we bring you happy hour day and night.
La Patrona.
Obstacle out of my way.
No problem. Just tell me who and give me all the details.
Get out of here! Get out!
Touch me, I beg of you, when you put your hands on my body.
You're disgusting!
It may be just you and me at the end. That means one of us will go to the other one's funeral.
Womanizer, get away from me, out of my life.
Come on, they must be over there.
Cecilia!
La Patrona.
You can download movies at the lowest prices and never fast from Orange. Dial *133# to buy a data bundle. Happy hour changes with Orange. Today changes with Orange.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Brian Mulondo is commiserating with the Brazilians, and I don't know if he's the one who posted this, but anyway, Brazil, Pele is asking, nah, my brother, I'm from Ghana. And some comments here saying the unbeatable match in terms of goals scored. Kevis Katende saying, but you people remember, we're either going to finish third or fourth, so probably all is not lost. And Stuart saying the only advantage is that they are not boarding the plane, they can even walk back to their villages. Quite interesting there. Now, earlier we had Simon with the big story today, and he had Professor Ndebesa, history lecturer from Makerere University. Now, some of your comments here. Iga says the Rwenzururu movement that is read in history can't be recalled in this era. People can't stand the suffering, but there are a few greedy, self-seeking people who probably will pick courage and join these conflicts that will not yield any fruit. We have Kato Moses saying the continued political creation of cultural institutions is on the verge of erupting and leading into unending violence in this small country with a number of different tribes. And Daniel asks, why are there so many military attires confiscated in a tribal clash? Are these actually just tribal issues, or are they rebels? And to more of your messages here, we have Brenda saying, not here in Uganda, the tribal clashes shouldn't be ours anyway. Thanks for the update. That was to a comment he made earlier about the identity crisis. We now cross over to Brian for Everyday Life. Good morning, Brian.
Thank you so much, Mabel. This morning on Everyday Life, facilities and services for children with special needs in Uganda are definitely neglected, and it has been one of the contentious issues in the budget for the next financial year. And mixing children with diverse disorders and further hindering development, especially for autistic children. Today, we're going to learn about this condition and what we as caregivers should do to help our children through this and secure them a bright future. Coming up on Everyday Life. Well, thank you so much for staying with us. And Dr. Nesta Mbabazi from Mulago Hospital, SAS Clinic, he's all over the place. Pediatrician this morning joining us. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning,
Thank you
Mr.
so
Brian.
much for taking off your time and coming to explain this. I'll get straight into it. Most people will say, my child is autistic. What does this mean?
Thank you very much, Brian. When somebody says my child is autistic, yeah, it is a very heavy statement, because this is a condition where a child has neurodevelopmental problems. This is a child who has a problem with development, whereas many other normal children are born, they grow, they begin crawling, they stand, they walk, they begin talking, they begin interacting, smiling, you know, making the family happy.
Yeah.
And we begin to envisage a bright future for them. However, when somebody says my child is autistic, it's very, very serious, because this is a child who is developmentally disturbed. He's not able to grow like other normal children. He has a brain development problem. So he's not growing just like the way other children should grow. So it's actually, we call it neurodevelopmental delay or neurodevelopmental disturbance or disorder,
right,
where a child is not growing normally. So in that situation, it really gives a big problem to the family and to the child and to the health workers and to the community. Everyone gets concerned.
They explain it by saying it is spectrum. It's on a spectrum.
Yes.
How is that different? Is it a different condition, or it's the same thing we are talking about?
So we have what we call autistic disorders or autistic spectrum. So this is a group of disorders which have similar characteristics, and but they vary in the details. So, but basically they are all about a problem with emotions, a problem with language development and communication, a problem with interaction, basically a problem with the cognitive development, the understanding and growing and communication of a child. So if a child has a problem in that area, then yet he's maybe physical okay, the hands and legs are working well, the eyes are hearing, the ears are hearing, but yet he's having developmental problems, especially with language, communication, interaction, emotions. Then they are called autistic disorders. Okay, or autistic spectrum. But then when we narrow down, then we get what we call autism. Now that's the particular one.
So the broader one is ASD, autistic spectrum disorders.
Yes. Then the one particular one is called autism. But it has other sister conditions. For example, one is called Rett disorder, RETT disorder. So that is also part of the autistic spectrum disorders. There is another one called childhood disintegrative disorder. So also in the group of autistic disorders.
Right.
So they are also, the other name for them is called pervasive developmental disorders. As here, the word pervasive means you are not growing in a normal fashion to the normal standards that we expect.
Right.
So it's perverted. You are growing but abnormally. Pervasive developmental disorders.
Wow.
Yes.
What would be the main signs and symptoms of autism?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Brian. The main symptoms and signs of autism, and of course generally autistic disorders, is one, this is a child who has been growing normally, and around the age of 1.5 years, we begin noticing abnormal behaviors. For example, language and development. Whereas you expect a child to begin talking, mama, tata, those one words, food, water, but you find this child is not talking. Whereas you find a child maybe of that age group begins showing interest in things. For example, toys, cartoons, things like that, TV, begins getting interested in TV.
I just found out yesterday that my son likes Pingu. I don't understand what.
Likes?
Pingu, a cartoon called Pingu. And when, ideally, if they take longer than the stage they're supposed to start, because we are told boys start late.
True.
So can we, does a parent have reason to worry? Because mine took a bit of, maybe it was delayed by about 2 or 3 months to start walking.
Yes.
Does that scare me?
Yes, when you see your child delaying to do certain things, it's always right to get scared a bit, but not extremely. But then the solution usually is to do what? To then seek a consultation with an experienced person or a specialist in that area, so that they can assess for you and say, this delay is acceptable or this delay is not acceptable. But if you see a child, for example, failing to get interested in what other children are getting interested in at the same age, like you said, cartoons, like toys, like cars, driving cars in the house, whereas other children in the same group are getting interested in them, for the other child is not getting interested at all, then you should begin getting worried. Other children can point when they want food, they say, they point there, a cup, they point there, they want a fruit, they point there, but your child cannot even point towards something they want, yet other children of the same age should be doing. You begin getting worried. Why is my child interested?
Right.
So those are some of the early signs.
Right.
The child grows 2 years that actually the child cannot talk, cannot communicate. 2.5 years, the child should be given to tell me, Mommy, I ate food. Mommy, I did this. Begin having a conversation.
Right.
Then you find that this child cannot at all. So say, my child is different from others, but I've heard of autism, you should begin worried.
Oh.
A key element is emotions. Children with autism seem aloof, are not interested in other people, parents, sisters and brothers, even children of the same age group. Most children, when you come home, look now, my son is